They thought it was just another hike, until they rolled away a stone and found a tomb untouched for centuries. Inside, skeletons in a perfect circle, a box gripped by a bony hand, and whispers from the shadows. But when they opened that box, they triggered something ancient, something that didn't want them to leave. What started as an adventure turned into a desperate race for survival, and the key to escape was in the last place they expected. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. Chris and Tommy's eyes gleamed with curiosity, fixated on the locked door that lay ahead. Emma, on the other hand, was hesitant and afraid, pleading to turn back. They were at a crossroads, to leave and live with the regret of not knowing, or to push forward and face the unknown. With a sense of adventure and curiosity, Emma finally gave in and agreed to continue exploring. Tommy took a few deep breaths as he gathered the courage for his next task. He stood before the door, focusing on his breath, and he landed a strong kick on the door. The sound echoed through the hallway, causing his companions to flinch. Then they all looked at the door with wide eyes. The door creaked open slowly, making a loud, horrible, screeching sound. It must not have been opened in many, many years. The trio held their breath and realized that they could not go back now. As they stepped into the ancient passage, the air grew damp and musty. The walls were lined with mysterious symbols and strange hieroglyphics. As they walked on, Emma's doubts began to creep in. The darkness was closing in, and the passageway seemed to go on endlessly. Chris and Tommy's determination didn't waver, despite Emma's protests to turn back. Soon enough, Emma's scream pierced through the eerie silence of the ancient passage, and the trio stumbled upon something that took their breath away. They all turned pale when they realized what they were looking at. They had been walking for so long, and they had been so focused on the path, making sure not to fall, that they hadn't been paying attention to their surroundings. They were now standing in an open space, surrounded by skeletons. Everywhere they looked, they saw heaps of bones. As they looked around the space, they noticed something about the skeletons. It seemed as if they were all arranged in a big circle, with one skeleton in the middle of it. As they approached the skeleton in the middle, they noticed something strange about it. They saw something shiny in its hands. It was holding a mysterious box. Upon taking a closer look, they saw that the box was completely covered with some kind of inscription. The three hikers were very curious to see what was written on the box, but the skeleton's hand was covering most of it. Chris and Tommy were discussing what would be the easiest way to take the box out of the skeleton's grasp when they heard a faint rustling noise coming from the darkness. They all froze in place, possible scenarios unfolding in their minds. Was someone in here with them? Tommy and Chris quickly shone their lights around the chamber, and they were relieved to see that it has just been a few leaves blown around by the wind. They wanted to continue, but Emma started shouting, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Have you completely lost your mind? We're not doing this. I want to leave this place now." Her voice echoed through the chamber. Chris felt a pang of guilt seeing Emma so scared. He tried to soothe her and reassure her that they were all in this together. He knew this was all a bit creepy, but they had come this far, and he couldn't let the opportunity slip away. Tommy nodded in agreement. If Chris was being honest with himself, he just couldn't shake the feeling that they shouldn't be here. But he wasn't going to tell the others that. If Emma knew he felt that way, she would never agree to stay. And the mystery of the box was too great to ignore, so Chris didn't just want to give up. Emma pleaded with him to leave the box behind and just go home, but Chris and Tommy were determined to uncover the secrets inside it. In the end, Emma agreed to stay, but she wasn't going to help them. She didn't want to touch any skeleton or even stand close to it. Emma waited outside the skeleton circle while Chris and Tommy cautiously approached the skeleton in the middle again. Both of them were scared, but their curiosity was much bigger than their fear. As they looked at the skeleton from up close, they got goosebumps and felt shivers go down their spine. Both guys disliked being inside the circle, so they decided to make it quick. Tommy's hands trembled as he reached for the box, feeling a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Chris carefully pulled apart the skeleton's fingers, and with one final tug, Tommy wrenched the box free from the skeleton's grasp, the sound of cracking bone echoing through the ancient chamber. As the three of them looked at the inscriptions on the box, they came to the conclusion that it must be a foreign, possibly even ancient, language. They could have stared at it for hours, but they wouldn't have become any wiser anyway, they thought. They took turns holding the box, inspecting it closely and looking for a way to open it. Emma got caught up in it all and forgot about her fear for a second. She loved puzzles, and this challenge captivated her. Upon closer inspection, Emma realized the box was a puzzle, with patterns and symbols to solve. Emma was absorbed, studying the carvings for connections. Finally, as she twisted the last piece, a soft click echoed from inside. She carefully lifted the lid, revealing the contents they had been so eager to see. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Inside was a golden key, intricately designed and gleaming. Chris and Tommy gasped. It had to belong somewhere within the tomb, they thought. They decided to search the chamber with the skeleton circle first, keeping an eye out for anything the key could unlock. After another hour of searching without success, they were beginning to lose hope when Chris shouted that he found something. Emma and Tommy rushed over, stunned by what they saw. Chris had discovered a hidden passage. While inspecting a wall, he accidentally triggered a stone door to slide open, revealing a bright light beyond. They stepped through the doorway and marveled at what they found. The room was filled with treasures, shiny statues, necklaces, bracelets, colorful gems, and coins. Their eyes darted around in amazement. Among the treasures were artifacts, maps, and ancient manuscripts. They realized this room held many secrets from the past, each item telling a hidden story. They were overwhelmed by the discovery, but knew there was one more mystery, the golden key. They began searching the room, trying the key on various boxes, when suddenly they heard voices. Whispers echoed through the chamber. They stared at each other in fear. Someone else was here. Before they could process it, a loud clanging noise erupted, filling the space with a terrifying sound. Then just as suddenly the noise stopped. Silence returned, thick and suffocating. They were frozen with fear. They needed a plan. Tommy whispered they should check it out. Emma disagreed, but Chris was already moving back toward the secret door. The other two followed cautiously. Without warning, Chris bolted through the opening and disappeared into the dark passageway. Emma and Tommy chased after him, calling out. Suddenly, a scream pierced the darkness. They sprinted after him, hearts pounding. When they reached him, they froze in horror. The metal door they had entered through earlier was now shut and locked. They tried everything to force it open, but it was no use. As they stood in front of the locked door, their hearts sank with fear. Who could have locked it back again? Was someone or something watching them? Emma's tears turned to sobs as the reality of their situation set in. Chris and Tommy exchanged a worried glance, but they knew they needed to focus and find a way out before it was too late. They were slowly becoming desperate, without service on their phones and so deep in the cave that no one could hear their cries. Hope was fading. Then Emma remembered she still had the key. It was a long shot, but it was all they had left. If the key couldn't open the door, they would be trapped forever. That thought terrified them more than anything else. Emma took the key from her pocket and stood before the door, knowing this moment would decide their fate. With tears streaming down her face, she took a deep breath and prayed. She inserted the key, and it fit. They gasped in excitement. Emma was about to turn the key when the voices echoed again from the darkness. Chris urged her to act fast. With adrenaline surging, she turned the key, unlocked the door, and they bolted toward the tomb's entrance. They ran faster than ever, knowing they had to reach daylight before whatever was making those sounds caught up. Relief washed over them as the faint light of day came into view. Chris pushed them onward until they burst out into the open air, breathless and shaken. Catching their breath, they realized they had survived. Though fear lingered, they were overwhelmingly relieved to see daylight and breathe fresh air again. As they gathered themselves, they debated what to do. Going home and forgetting everything seemed tempting, but they agreed they needed to tell the police. Unsure whether they would be believed, they decided to drive straight to the station. When they arrived, the officers were skeptical. Covered in mud and dust, their story of hidden tombs, skeletons, treasures, and whispering voices sounded unbelievable. But Emma refused to give up. Stubborn and persistent, she convinced two officers to accompany them back to the tomb. She was certain that once they saw the entrance, they would believe every word. At the sight, the officers were stunned. They immediately called for backup, and soon the place swarmed with police cars, investigators, and archaeologists. Chris, Emma, and Tommy were finally able to return home, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened. A few days later, a police officer knocked on Emma and Chris's door with incredible news. The tomb belonged to a lost ancient civilization. The friends were astonished, but one mystery remained unsolved. Curious, they asked about the voices. The officer laughed and explained that grave robbers had been inside the tomb. A group of thieves, searching for rumored treasure, had found the tomb's entrance but failed to discover the hidden room. Unlike Chris, they had locked the trio inside to prevent them from escaping with the treasure. The grave robbers were arrested, and Chris, Emma, and Tommy became local heroes. Their discovery helped archaeologists learn more about a forgotten civilization, and eventually the tomb was transformed into a museum showcasing its beautiful artifacts. Chris, Emma, and Tommy continued their hikes, their bond stronger than ever. The terrifying experience had changed their lives for the better. When Chris and Emma had their first child, they honored their friendship by asking Tommy to be the baby's godfather.